Hi everyone, my name is Michael Seiger and I'm the founder and publisher of iSixSigma.com, the largest community of Lean and Six Sigma professionals in the world and the resource for learning to drive breakthrough improvement. Here's what we do here. We bring on successful Lean and Six Sigma business leaders, learn from their experiences, and share their strategies and tactics. Then, when you have a success to share, you come on the show and give back as today's guest is going to do. And here's today's big question. Many people know what it means to improve a process, but which methodology is the right methodology for your organization? Is it Lean, Six Sigma, Theory of Constraints, PDCA, or some other framework? Joining me today to answer this question is Joe DeFeo. Joe is the CEO and executive coach at Juran Institute, a globally recognized training and consulting firm that enables organizations from any industry to learn the tools and techniques for managing quality and performance excellence. Joe, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Mike. It's good to be back. It's good to see you back at the helm.
Thank you, Joe. It's good to be back. We're going to dive into some of the different types of process improvement methodologies so we can define and compare them for the audience. Then we'll help the audience select the best methodology for their organization, whether they're already into process improvement and they need to readjust and refocus, or whether they are brand new to implementing a quality process at their organization and they're trying to figure out what's right for them. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds great. Let's roll.
Okay, so let's start off with some basic descriptions. Let's start off with Lean and then Six Sigma, because often people refer to Lean Six Sigma or Six Sigma as just one methodology. So let's just start with Lean. How do you describe the Lean methodology to somebody that doesn't know much about Lean?
Well, I think your question is very good, because the first thing we have to do wherever we are is to define those words, because they mean so many things to different people. And so, if you go by the Japanese version of Lean, the American version of Lean, or society's versions of Lean, they all have a very different description. So whatever I define it as, if I offend anybody, at least I'm putting a box around it.
Right.
So in my history growing up on Lean, from working with Toyota in the U.S. and our founder working with Japan and Toyota particularly, and then my own experience doing just-in-time manufacturing and early Lean, and then Lean, and now at the helm of Juran doing all of that in many industries. We define Lean, and I think it's very simply defined as the improvement of product or service delivery, speed, and throughput, so that the customer will get their product and service better, faster, cheaper. At the same time, the organization can mobilize quickly and get the business result benefit of that. Mm-hmm. And so what falls under the Lean box are things like rapid improvement events, because we're going after speed. So by removing an obstacle, we can go faster. Rapid improvement event aimed at throughput, which is anything that's constraining. And you mentioned theory of constraints, but theory of constraints came before Lean, so they applied the theory of constraints there. It includes Kanbans in the manufacturing and even in the healthcare setting now, where it's the ability for a person performing work to be able to pass work off to the next person, and if it's not completely right, they can send it back. So what Juran called a very close feedback loop between the processor, customer, and their supplier. Mm-hmm. So you have rapid improvement, you have Kanban, you have the entire, in the manufacturing side, inventory management, inventory reduction. But I will define Lean in the simplest terms. Lean is about understanding market and customer demand and matching your delivery capability to that. And many folks want to focus on rapid improvement, success, and that, but it's really about matching demand. So what Toyota was able to do with the Toyota production system is to really be able to not create a whole bunch of inventory, but match the inventory demand to the customer demand. And so they were able to produce cars when customers want them. And that ability to do that then enabled them to mass customize cars to be able to produce what the customer wants. And so if you keep that evolving over year after year, you go from this mass production, mass customization to really, one car per person mentality. On the Six Sigma side...
hold on 1 second, Joe. So that's a fantastic definition, and I love the way that, we're talking about improving speed and throughput to be able to match it. But I really love your definition, understanding the demand of the customers and matching it with the supply from your process. And so is it safe to say that lean is really an umbrella that includes all of the tools to do that, including rapid improvement events like Kaizen or workout, theory of constraints, Kanban? You know, are those sort of frameworks that fall in underneath the umbrella of lean?
Yes, and if you say lean enterprise, it makes more sense because lean methods are one thing, but if you're looking at an organization to matching demand, you obviously need those in various parts of the organization. So yes, the lean enterprise umbrella includes that collection of tools. Okay. And mind you, it includes a collection of corrective action tools, but at a different level than a Six Sigma corrective action toolkit might.
Okay. All right. So I understand lean now, or lean enterprise. Do people sometimes refer to it as, how do organizations that are implementing lean enterprise typically refer to it within their organizations? Do they say, I'm a lean service company? Do they say, I'm a lean enterprise?
Very interesting because, there's a number of, what they do is they all narrow down that whole intent of lean. So for instance, the manufacturing companies get matching demand and delivery. Service companies don't quite get it, and working in hospitals don't quite get it. So they say we are practicing lean, or they're practicing Six Sigma or Lean Six Sigma, but they're practicing lean in this case. And what that means is we're doing rapid improvement events, we're doing Kanban, we're doing 6S. And so they tend to narrow that down, but they will say we're doing lean. And that's why I always have to say, so what are you doing? And so they'll say we're doing 6S. Okay, I got that. What else are you doing? I'm doing rapid improvement. Okay, I got that. We're doing inventory management. Okay, so now I understand you're looking at that. So yes, they say I'm lean, and we see that in lean enterprise, lean organization are the kind of two ways: one for profit, one for nonprofit.
All right,
agencies.
Very clear in my mind now. I get that. So let's take a step forward to Six Sigma. Let me first ask you this: today, is Lean Six Sigma the same as Six Sigma?
No, it's not, because of its own evolution. So let me answer that with Six Sigma first. So Six Sigma was the evolution from basic quality improvement and PDCA. Lean evolved from just in time in the manufacturing side. So Lean evolved from there. We got Lean. Six Sigma evolved from quality improvement. Lean Six Sigma evolved from the belief and the necessary belief that we don't need two separate entities all focused on the same goal of improving business performance, fighting each other. The processes that we have are slow and get stopped. The processes we have also create highly variable outputs. Hence, the combination of Six Sigma to reduce variation and Lean to improve speed and throughput. Now, that's not saying that company A's company calls all of that Lean. Another company calls all of that Six Sigma. What we like to see is if you're using a toolbox of Six Sigma to reduce variation, defects, and focus on those products and services the customers have, and you're using Lean, use the term Lean Six Sigma. It just says clearly we're doing both. Mm-hmm. Now, how do we do both? We do it with rapid improvement events. We do it with Six Sigma events. And the difference between those are scale. Large, small. You can have a large Six Sigma project, a small Six Sigma project. You can have a big Lean project, a small Lean project. So your whole point of this presentation today is actually very good, because what's the right methodology for us? Clearly, if we're an organization that is getting a lot of pushback from a customer because my services vary day to day, that doesn't necessarily lend itself to go improving speed. It means go find where the variation is. Is the variation in how fast we answer calls? How good we answer the calls? Is it person to person, day to day? So that Lean toolbox doesn't necessarily have that Six Sigma tool. Mm-hmm. Just like the Six Sigma tool, people tend to think about variation and defect. Well, speed can be variable as well. Mm-hmm. But you don't need to have a sledgehammer to fix speed issue when you've got a tool set of Lean. So Lean Six Sigma is the coming together of those toolkits. Now, there's one other step. Six Sigma came with a very easy terminology of DMAIC, DMAIC. There's no real easy Lean methodology like that. So to conduct rapid improvement events, to conduct a corrective action, or even do a Lean project, we recommend you just follow define, measure, analyze, improve, control. So instead of defining the defect, you're defining the flow. In some organizations, some companies will do that. And so Lean Six Sigma is the coming together not only of the methodologies and the toolkit all under that umbrella, but also the people doing it. So we create Lean experts, we create Six Sigma experts, we create Lean Six Sigma experts. Sadly, just like when I started my career 25 years ago, the just-in-time people got more attention of upper management because they thought it was faster, simpler, easier. And we did a great job of improving speed, but we never changed the definition of quality so that we might have been creating defects faster or creating products that customers didn't want. So the other side of Six Sigma, which came from the quality roots, is that you can't limit your definition to just deficiency and defect. You gotta open it up to what the customer means, and that is we have the right products, the right features to meet our needs. And Lean doesn't design features unless the only feature you have is speed. Okay, Lean, you don't design the color of a book, the shape of a computer, the documents that you're giving your customer with Lean. You do that with design tools. You do that with some of the Six Sigma tools. So to not upset Lean folks or not upset Six Sigma folks, there are different purposes. Similarly, there's a different purpose to doing just a root cause analysis, which we define as we had a process operating at good performing levels, something changed, caused a problem, do a root cause analysis, correct that change, and move on. And so we could differentiate. Incidentally, Dr. Juran said the best way to manage business performance is to focus on what satisfies the customer's wants and needs. The customer's wants and needs want products that work, services that work, and they also want those things that meet their needs. So it has the right color, the right shape, the right dimension, the right reliability, the right everything. So to do that, you plan, control, and improve. Hence, we have root cause corrective action, process control to control. We have Lean Six Sigma to make improvement. Both of those do root cause analysis, but of a different type. Corrective action, root cause analysis, is typically looking at a sporadic spike, a special cause, where Lean and Six Sigma are going at systemic issues or chronic issues or embedded in the organization issues or common cause. And when you approach those two things that way, the toolbox is different, because correcting something that changed from day to day once is very different from trying to weed out all the deficiency in that process over many years.
Makes sense. So is it an oversimplification to say that Lean Enterprise will help your process speed and throughput, and Six Sigma will improve reduce the variation so the customer gets a more consistent product, and then Lean Six Sigma envelops both of those tool sets to reduce variation and supply the demand that customers expect when they expect it?
Yes, and I'm going to go one step further. The application of those three can be independent or all together. So people may have you asked the question, what's the right method? We may have a very important need that we focus on Lean right now. But as we focus on Lean, we're going to realize that we have other issues, because a process is a process. They have, systemic, they have chronic, they have sporadic. So we might move down that Lean path and move over. We might move down the Six Sigma path and realize that not every problem needs to be a DMAIC project. So we might have to do some more simpler ones. Or we find that our problem lies in design and we do a DMADV or DMEDV or a design project or quality by design. So the real statement is to manage a business performance focused on the customer and what's important to them. The Lean Six Sigma, and Six Sigma methodologies are all under one roof, but you can go down the path at different times. And ideally, how you teach your people and who becomes the experts. What you don't want is experts fighting each other. But we have electricians, we have mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, we have chemical engineers. They all have different paths, but they're all engineers. And so Lean Six Sigma, process improvement, they're all process engineers. That's what they do. And so people have to understand that different tool for different issue, but pick the right one at the right time and teach the right people. Not everybody becomes a Lean sensei. Not everybody becomes a Lean Six Sigma black belt.
Yeah. Joe, there were a couple other methodologies that I was going to ask you about: theory of constraints and just in time. Are those not methodologies that would compete with Lean or Six Sigma, but those are actually methodologies that fit under both of those umbrellas?
Well, I think you have two things going on there. One is there are different methodologies. They came at a different point in time as well. So both of those I would consider to be predecessors to Lean Enterprise, predecessors to Six Sigma, and particularly Theory of Constraints came out with a very important book, The Goal, and the message at that time was, we have an inventory problem, we have a throughput problem, and the reason is we have constraints. And the best way I describe to people is that you can see constraints pretty easily when you start looking. Just drive through the center of town and watch where the bottlenecks are. They're at bad intersections. They're at tight intersections. Go into a parking lot and watch how people have trouble getting through doors. So we can see these constraints. So the theory of constraint concept was a tool and a method and an approach. But that evolved into the toolkit of Lean Enterprise. In the same way, just in time was the method that evolved into the purpose of Lean Enterprise, is to deliver product and service just in time. But depending on the country you're in, the business you're in, the industry you're in, those terms might be the same as we just talked about. So just in time might be the banner for Lean. Theory of constraints might be the entire banner for Six Sigma and Lean. But what most organizations do, and we do this as well, is that in black belt training, they're both learning just in time and theory of constraints, because that's where we believe it needs to be.
Okay, that makes sense. And do you see companies today that go out and implement the Toyota Production System, TPS, or do they today realize that TPS was great in the day that Toyota was dominating the market with the highest quality products delivered exactly when the customers wanted them, and today it's evolved into Lean Enterprise?
Well, I think if you went to Toyota and you went to Japan, you wouldn't find people talking about Lean Enterprise. And that's what's really very different. We over here in America and around the world see what they did, and we call it Lean Enterprise and Lean Thinking. Matter of fact, a very similar thing happened in the 1970s with quality circles. A lot of American researchers went over there and said, wow, these guys are doing all these things. And they came back with quality circles. They didn't come back with the stuff they were doing. So we got quality circles, but we found out later it was a little bit narrow. And the same thing here. We came back with this piece. So I think the answer to the question lies in that the Toyota Production System is a system that embellishes the enterprise in continuous improvement, and a continuous improvement in design as well as process. So under that is the Lean Six Sigma set of methods and tools that evolved from many, many places. The good thing about the Toyota Production System is that we don't see as many people saying we want to do the Toyota Production System, but that's evolved to we want to do the Acme Production System. We want to do the Johnson Controls Operating System, or our Business Operating System, or the Mayo Clinic Operating System. And so what that does, it forced people to really think, okay, we're a system. What are those things in our system? What's the purpose of our system? So organizations now are smart enough to define their operating system or business system or production system, put their name on it, but put the methods under it. And there's a reason for that. Healthcare doesn't make Toyotas. Food industry doesn't make cars. And so the more you use one company's name to blanket all industries, the more cynicism you're going to get. Yeah. Matter of fact, when Toyota has a recall, all of a sudden the Toyota production system is bad. Or when a Baldrige winner years ago, had an issue related to the banking crisis, had nothing to do with their customers, all Baldrige is bad. So, you want to lessen that cynicism, and the best way to do that is to call it your own, and then use the tools and methodologies that are under
great point. I'm going to dive into that a little bit more with our questions later on in the interview, Joe, but I'm glad you brought that up because it's a great point. So let me ask you about one other methodology that was big in the United States back in the 80s. You mentioned a bunch of quality gurus went over to help Japan post World War II. They stayed there. Japan took off with their quality initiatives. They started these quality circles. They came back to the U.S., and then we had a total quality management revolution. Everybody was doing total quality management. Does anybody implement quality processes today and call it TQM anymore?
Absolutely. Matter of fact, Japanese particularly. You go to Japan, and we're working with a Japanese company, and they're calling their total quality management program total quality management. And the reason is because the words mean something And once again, the U.S. likes to brand things and then shoot them when we've done with the brand. But I've been to third world countries, emerging markets, China, and the words total quality management mean the same thing as Toyota Production System. It means the enterprise system. Now, in the way we define TQM here, that's kind of narrow. But what I tell people is that just like the quality circles and the quality improvement and TQM and the reengineering, each of those methods did the right thing at the right time to help us move forward. And although those methods are all the same under that TQM banner, we can't live with the same term very long. And that's not different in quality as it is in finance or it is anywhere else. We have to keep evolving our educational level. We have to keep evolving from very complex systems to simpler systems. And so our methods evolve. But yeah, TQM is used surprisingly more than you think. And even people that are using Six Sigma, they're putting it under their TQM banner. Yep. I know of a very successful company, Doosan Construction Equipment, that's based in Korea, and they're all over the world, particularly, but they're a Korean-based company, and they call it their Total Quality Management System. I see another European company do the same thing. So yes, it's still practical.
We don't necessarily see it called TQM in the U.S., but outside of the U.S., it's still used widely.
And it makes sense. And I would say widely, and it makes sense because we tend to move fast. We want to evolve fast. They tend to move slower, so they're using that, and it works. But what they're bringing into that is Six Sigma and Lean. So their total quality management system means that's how we manage our quality management system here.
Yeah.
Or our business system.
All right, excellent. Joe, we're going to dive into more of the questions about which methodologies might be the appropriate ones for different industries, different processes, different types of companies, and different companies around the world. But first, I want to take a step back and ask you a few questions about Juran Institute. You run Juran Institute, named for the founder, Dr. Joseph Juran. If you had to summarize Dr. Juran's quality legacy in a nutshell, how do you describe it to people?
Well, I think there's two ways. One is him and one is his methods, and I'll go with him first. In the short time that I got to work with him, 25 years, to 103, his legacy was do the right thing for the customer, and the customer will do the right thing for you. And so if you do the right thing for the customer, they will pay you back by buying and using your product and service. But he went a little bit more and said, but the customer needs change, so you always have to be monitoring that. So to today, doing the right thing to the customer also may mean doing the right thing for society. And Dr. Juran was all about doing the right things for society. Now, in the method side, Dr. Juran's legacy is going to be for not just very specific things like naming the Pareto principle or the universal sequence for breakthrough or his handbook. It's going to be remembered for providing a framework to helping an organization manage business results through quality. And that is permeated in many, many textbooks, many, many books. And like I tell the students I have today, they have no idea who Dr. Juran was, but they're seeing it in history books, they're seeing it in science, in engineering books and business books. And then they look it up and they say, oh, okay, that's who that was. In the same way a production person would look for Taylor, a quality person would look for Juran. But the legacy is he provided that framework that helps us manage for business results through quality.
Yeah, great description. And, for anybody that hasn't had the pleasure or the opportunity to read Dr. Juran's books, Joe, you invited me to Dr. Juran's 100th birthday celebration. When The Architect of Quality came out, I was very fortunate and very thankful for that. And I got to shake Dr. Juran's hand, and he personally signed my copy of the book, which I treasure. And then, of course, there's the Juran Institute Six Sigma Breakthrough and Beyond book, which I have, and Juran's Quality Handbook, which, look at that one. I haven't quite read every chapter in here yet, but
why not?
Phenomenal contributions to quality, to businesses, to society. A lot of people may not have the opportunity to go back and watch Dr. Juran speak, and they should look for those opportunities on video. They should look for the opportunities to read the books and to study his works, because he's really changed the profession and changed how businesses operate. So let me ask you this, Joe. You're clearly well-versed in all of the methodologies. How long have you been practicing quality and process improvement?
Uh, I got involved in 1985, and interesting how you just described that because, uh, and I like that you recognize that my approach and our approach is not about a guru. It's about the methods that are needed to get business results. And that goes back to your question, when did I get started? In 1985, I was a technical trainer teaching electronics to service engineers. And I was a high school teacher before that, so I loved teaching. And an opportunity came about. There was actually two opportunities. One was I just finished my master's in business, and I wanted to run a training department. Mm-hmm. And so I went to the training department in the company, PerkinElmer, the company that I was working for, was a very successful company at the time, and they didn't have a job opening, so I kind of went outside, as every good college graduate who had just had their company pay for you go outside. And out of 200 applicants, I came in number 2 for a job at a very large, successful company, and I did not get the job because I did not know who Juran and Deming were. This is 1986. I did not know who Juran and Deming were. So I was very curious, and the recruiter said, "You better find out." He didn't know either. So I went back to PerkinElmer, and I went back to the HR department, and they said, "I don't know who Juran and Deming are, but you should talk to this guy, Tom Huizinga. And he works for the president." So I went and found Tom. I said, "Tom, who's Juran and Deming?" He says, "Oh," and he described Dr. Juran and Dr. Deming. And he said, "And by the way, our company is going to be launching what's called the Quality Business Plan, and we're going to fight back against our competitors, particularly the Japanese, who are really beating us up." And not only that, I said, "My God, that is great. I'd love to do that." So I posted for the job and got the job as basically facilitator of quality improvement team. What's really interesting is that my address on my business card was 77 Danbury Road, Wilton, Connecticut, and the Juran Institute was 88 Danbury Road, Wilton, Connecticut, across the street. And so I took that job. We launched the Quality Business Plan. I got my training from each of the divisions. One had Deming, one had Crosby, one had Juran. And I saw the benefits of their emphasis. Clearly that, the Crosby side was really getting leaders energized. Mm-hmm. The Deming side was being very clear about the importance of customers and use of data analysis. And then the Juran side, which is really that framework that I talked about. And so so I got to work heavily with Juran Institute and the other two. And then we brought in Schoenberger for just in time. We brought in design of experiments experts. We had manufacturing design experts. We had Boothroyd and Dewhurst, very famous at the time for design for manufacturing. And so I got all this exposure, and we did turn the place around. As a matter of fact, we were the runner-up to Motorola in the first Baldrige Award. Wow. That's how good we got. However, it was also like I graduated, it was time to move on, and I ended up getting offered a job at Juran Institute because I had just utilized their methods and materials, and it was at a time where the Institute was really expanding. And so I went over there. And
you went across the street?
I literally went across the street. I actually have two business cards, one with one side of the street, one with the other. And it was just a really strange story. So I tell everybody I got to be running Juran Institute because I didn't know who they were. And it's really interesting that I had the pleasure of working with them. And being a trained educator, I came in and I was the trainer. Whereas a lot of the other folks were deployment leaders. And so I got qualified in a lot of things, and I loved it, and I went and took a lot of assignments nobody had because I was a junior guy. And over time, I just outlived everybody, including Dr. Juran, but he was 103.
He was.
And so I still deliver about 50% of the time, and I will not stop doing that because that was the model that Dr. Juran set. And prior to me, Bland Godfrey was the chairman, and he did the same thing, and he's still doing the same thing at North Carolina State University.
Yeah, definitely. And so you've probably worked with tens, if not hundreds, of companies over the years?
I have had hundreds. I'm shocked that I look back. It would be really amazing. So 23 years at Juran Institute. And I can define the answer to that question. The first 5 years was hundreds and hundreds of companies. because I was the trainer and I would go in and just do what I was told to do and come out. So one year I taught 45-day workshops around the world to companies like Heinz executives and Duracell executives. And so if I were to count all those, it would be in the thousands. But the clients that I supported face-to-face deployment, where I got a lot of the experience beyond what I had before that, would be probably 500 to 600 people. And I got to work with Steve Jobs. I got to work with Bob Kidder from Duracell, all these guys in their young era. And one thing that's remarkable is all CEOs are good. That's why they got to be CEOs, but not all are great.
Yeah.
And the ones that are great, you learn from. And so, I had a really good opportunity. Plus, going with Dr. Duran to some of the places he went, because we used to tag along all the time. I mean, that was just, he got indoors that I couldn't get in, and he got paid a heck of a lot more than we could get.
So tell me what it was like to work with Steve Jobs. What was that engagement? What did you do with him?
Not to talk about Apple, but this was Apple long before This was Apple Computers.
Right.
And Apple Computers had a very good director of quality, and they engaged one of our key people in the services side to help them. And so for a good period of time, we were doing the same Durana quality improvement training that we were doing around the world there. Mm-hmm. And Jobs was just a young technical person, although he ran the company.
It was the first time he was CEO before he left and started his other movie companies and everything, and then came back to Apple for the iPod, iPhone.
Yeah. And there's a video on YouTube which we put out there, which was Steve Jobs talking about Dr. Duran, because Steve Jobs got a little indoctrination from that, and it's pretty good. And I don't want to put it into your video, but if you want to see it, you can go out there and see it. And we are not surprised that Apple has done as well as they did, because Apple truly understands the needs of customers and able to create products that meet those needs. Customers don't want iPads and iPhones, but they wanted the convenience of communication, and they figured it out. Right. And this is, I think, the gem behind people who get to know the real heart behind quality methods like this, is that they learn to really outperform their competitors because they have a much better understanding of their customers. And once you have that, you then create a system behind it. And there are some, Toyota gets it. They spend an enormous amount of time understanding their customers. Ford gets it. Our automotive companies, after many, many decades, get it. Hospitals starting to get it. So you're starting to see a real difference between who gets it and who doesn't get it. And the ones who don't get it eventually have two choices. They get it or they go out.
Right. Well, I'm interested to see that video. I'm glad you brought it up. I'll find it and I'll link to it underneath this video. So if somebody wants to watch that after this one, they can do that. So the other personal question I have for you, Joe, since you've been in the industry so long, since you've been exposed to so many companies and so many great people at these companies using the Duran framework and philosophy and implementing it in their company, what would you say is your greatest quality accomplishment? Maybe something you did, maybe it's something that you didn't do, but you had an impact on.
I tell everybody it was Duracell. My greatest accomplishment, because Duracell, before they were sold to Gillette, was a battery manufacturer that was a leveraged buyout, and I got to meet the CEO and chairman, Bob Kidder, and his staff. And Bob Kidder was a guy who was an ex-McKinsey partner who came into Duracell, and I had to do a sales call, one of my first sales calls. And I did this sales call, and I talked, and I did this, and I did that, never realizing what he did. And at the end, he says, you know what? He says, I already watched all 15 of Dr. Duran's videotapes. I already checked out who Duran Institute was. And all you had to do was just find that out. We could have moved faster. But so I learned a valuable lesson, but he hired me and hired us. And over the next 5 years, Duracell became an absolutely unbelievable company, because that guy, Bob Kidder, walked around every day with a strategic plan in his pocket that said, we are going to outperform our competitor, won't mention their name, in performance of our product. And they did everything they could. And as a result, they told me later on that it was probably one of the best things they ever did, was really to get the methodologies for project by project improvement. And so I always use Duracell as a case example. And by the way, Bob Kidder went on to unbelievable at Borden, and most recently Chrysler's acting chairman because he's part of the KKR. But I learned so much from that organization. Not to poo-poo any other organizations, but that happened early in my career, and it just stuck. And the thing that I learned from that, and they learned from us, the thing that I learned from them is that every organization can learn from somebody else who knows something about something they don't know. And they were so willing to take that chance and take that risk. And today we see a lot of organizations that, like, because everybody can Google everything, they're an expert at everything, but there's not enough depth of expertise in some folks, or worse, they don't have the bandwidth. You know, it's just like, it just don't have the bandwidth. So I learned a lot from that, and it was a great experience.
Excellent. All right. So a lot of people, you know, like we did early in the interview, Joe, we define terms, and I think by defining them, they help make them more concrete in people's minds. And now you can have a communication. I was in a meeting with some quality improvement professionals last week, and they were talking about end-to-end, getting the mindset of end-to-end processes within your business so that people within the business can now think, well, it's not just the work that I do in my one area, but it comes in from another group, it leaves from another group, and the customer actually experiences the entire process from end to end when they place the order and how long they have to wait. And at GE, we called it wing to wing, and you can call it cradle to grave. And one person in the audience said, in the group said, well, I hate using the terminology like that because there's so much. And I said, well, if you can't define it, if you can't give it a name and then have people understand what that means, it makes it much more difficult to communicate and have a conversation and take the thought process within the organization to the next level. So I don't want to belabor the point, but I like to define these, and I appreciate you helping us define them in our minds so that we can continue the conversation. What do you say when people are confused about the difference between a process improvement methodology and a business improvement methodology?
And I agree with you in your comment. And the one thing we learned from Dr. Duran was he was a very precise communicator. And so every book he did had a huge glossary. Matter of fact, he believes every organization should have their own glossary. And for the same reason we have dictionaries and languages is so that we can communicate. So if we spoke different languages and didn't know each other's words, we could not communicate. So if you said lean and I said lean, and we didn't have the same upbringing on lean, we would be thinking apples and apples, but it's really apples and oranges. So Dr. Duran always started off by saying, well, let's define it. So you'll notice in every book we have, and every course we do, we define because we want to put ourselves in the same perspective. So to answer your question about business process improvement and process improvement, I'm going to define it very simply, that the whole purpose of a business is to grow and make money. The whole purpose of a non-business is to grow and meet budget. So let's keep that there. So the next question is, why do we do process improvement? We only do process improvement to grow and make money or grow and keep our budget. So hence, all process improvement is related to business improvement. And so that's one definition. The process improvement methods of Lean, Six Sigma, Kanban, JIT, theory of constraints, all have a purpose to really go after the steps and tasks that go from end to end in an organization. Now, because the end to end could be so great, we break them down into parts. And so we call those process improvement projects, quality projects, lean projects. And the reason is that there could be many, many parts. Now, the reality is that a business improves when those parts improve. Now, what really messes people up is that there really is a definition between process improvement from a manufacturing connotation and business process improvement from a non-manufacturing. So you'll hear people say, you know, we're doing business process management, business process improvement. One could, if you don't define that, you believe they're the same definition of me. But no, business process improvement means all the back offices, which later became called transactional, meaning business processes that are unrelated to production. So if you don't define, you will get multiple definitions. So we like to think of it as a business is trying to improve its performance. They can apply business process improvement to just business processes, or business and process improvement to all processes. The business process improvement applied to all processes, people call all kinds of things. Process improvement, quality improvement, CPI, all that.
Right.
The reality is, one focuses on the process. If you do them across the business, you've got it. You mentioned, though, the end-to-end. And the one good contribution that the Lean folks brought in is the term value stream. In that a business process is a beginning and an end with a bunch of work done in the middle. Although we quantify the waste there, the Lean terminology of a value stream gives a message that all business processes should go from end to end and provide value, not just to the end customer, which its purpose is, but also to the business. So looking at the value along the way forces you to really ask the question, is this useful or not useful? Is it value or non-value? So in today's terminology, you could get synonyms: process improvement, business process improvement, value stream, mapping, value stream. They all mean the same thing. But what really could separate them apart is your time in history, because things have evolved. If you open up a dictionary today and see process improvement and business process improvement, it would probably say non-production production, non-business production. And if you go into an industry like a hospital and you see process improvement, it might have a little different meaning than a government agency meaning process improvement.
Yeah, and so when you said that the purpose of business process improvement is to, and I'm trying to remember exactly how you phrased it, grow the business and increase revenue, or if it's a not-for-profit organization, grow the business and maintain budget, or maybe if it's a back office, grow the operation and maintain the budget. What about when you're the government, or you're the IRS, or you're the U.S. Postal Service?
That's kind of what I meant about the agency side. So if you don't have a top line,
right,
to grow, but what we say is that you have a charter, you have a set of requirements, and your job is to grow that, stay alive. That's what I mean by growth, to stay alive. But your measure of success is meeting the budget or giving money back in the budget.
Right.
And what we do know is that the organizations that meet and exceed budgets, in the sense they do good at it, tend to get more money. So it really does have a similar connotation. But there is a limiting factor. They don't get revenue from satisfying customers. But what they do get is approval of the next budget cycle, or they get or disapproval if you don't do that. And also, not just government, but you have to look at agencies that are government, but defense and defense contractors are different from defense agencies. So we kind of put you in two buckets. One is that anybody that has a customer that pays you money and you can increase the top line, versus a government which gives you a budget and you've got to maintain that.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. So it's still process improvement.
Okay. All right. So let's dive into, how does a company choose the right business improvement methodology to implement at their organization? What do you say to somebody where you don't know what industry they're in, you don't know what product they produce, what service is delivered? What's your general advice?
This might shock you, but we would start off with, what problem you have that you're trying to solve and why? And it's a very simple question, but the reason I have to ask that, and we have to ask that, is because there's a group of people that say, we would like you to help us do Lean. We would like you to help us do Six Sigma. It's usually not coming, could you help us? So they already got this, what we want. And then we'll say, well, why do you want to do Lean? Why do you want to do Six Sigma? And I'm asking that to get the answer to that first question. Why? What do you need? What's wrong? And so once they answer those questions, and so somebody say, we've got customer dissatisfaction. We have great products, great services, but we're delivering late, in the sense that we're not getting it on time, so we're paying extra penalties. We have a great design, great features, but we have a lot of complexity and people are complaining. So you're trying to find that it. And if they say, we want to change the culture, well, unfortunately, I got to ask another question. Why? And it usually goes back to that. So once you get the organization or whomever you're working with to answer the question why, then comes a simple answer: what methodology is best? So, for instance, I recently brought into an organization that makes home products, and they said, we want you to come in and do the Juran Management of Quality workshop that Dr. Juran did. It's a 5-day workshop. And we did it in 2 now. And I said, why? And they said, well, because we want our staff to learn what you learned. I said, that's great. Why? You think somebody wants to learn what you learned just because you thought it was good?
Right.
That's not how learning. I said, well, why? Well, we've changed our focus, and we've gone from this to this. I said, okay, so what's the problem? He says, well, people are confused, processes are good, blah, blah. I said, okay, now you got it. So now I understand why you want this course. Now let's talk about what comes in the course. Mm-hmm. You have a design issue, you have a process issue, you have a defect issue, you have a variation issue. I said, yeah, we have all that. So now I can say, okay, we got the whole method. So one is starting with what the business need is, and it sounds very consultative, but it is. And it's a mistake people make because one shoe does not fit all.
Right.
One size doesn't fit all. So from there, we have if you could picture a decision symbol with above it is what's wrong, and then the decision with a bunch of arrows coming out. And one arrow might be stay the course, just do it, fight the fires. And so therefore, corrective action, root cause analysis at its simplest. The other one might be you really should engage in true process improvement project by project because your problems are multifunctional. And so a Six Sigma methodology is your best bet in any definition like that. You're clearly working on throughput, speed, delivery times, man, or too much inventory, none of it, go after lean right off the bat, do that. If it's very narrow and it's a department issue or like you said, a back office issue, then maybe it's something very simple of a self-directed work team or a 6S standardization of the workplace. So that's how they pick and choose. The problem with that thinking, though, from the customer side is that they don't have experts in all 4 of those. They don't have experts in those.
Right.
So you tend to go down one path. And so today, and this is why Lean and Six Sigma have come together. Today, the approach to educating and supporting the customer is here's the umbrella of tools. Pick the right one as you move down the path. The commonalities to them, they have to have resources, they have to have a leader, they have to have subject matter experts, they have some methodology, some tools. So that's what's common to them all. But let's pick the problem that you can solve right now. Right. Because some people get so expectations, I'm going to fix things very quickly. And it's not. I think the other thing, too, is that the consulting companies like the McKinseys and those big BCGs, they come in and solve the problem, and they leave. Mm-hmm. That changes the baseline. The methodologies we talk about, we do that, too. But the real benefit of these methodologies is to transfer that knowledge to the workforce because of what I think I tried to explain earlier from Dr. Duran is that customer needs constantly change. Mm-hmm. When customer needs constantly change, the processes and product features have to constantly change. Right. Therefore, if you keep calling people in to fix the problem every time the needs change, you're in trouble. So these are really core skills that have to be learned and applied. And if you're stuck or you need a boost, great. But they're really what we call training-led consulting versus consulting-led consulting, meaning you're educating your own people to go solve their own priors and their own problems. And I think that's a significant benefit and a significant risk because people don't realize that that's expensive in the short term, but it's got a big gain in the long term. Exactly. It's just like hire a black belt. Hiring a black belt may speed you up in the training, but it may not do anything for the improvement because that black belt don't know you from anyone else. They're just an external consultant. You just happen to hire them full time. And we see that a lot. So I'd like to think that the approach is good and sound. What's the problem? What methods are best? And is it training-led or consulting-led? Mm-hmm. And maturity of that business, maturity of that industry, and that timeline where they are is going to really dictate what to do first, second, and third. I met, interesting, I was at a function at Christmas time, the holiday season, and I met the ex-CEO of Allied. And I think you met him years ago, too.
Are you speaking about Larry Bossidy?
Larry Bossidy. He was sitting in front of me in this show. I said, I've never met Larry Bossidy, so I want to meet you. Yeah. And I said, hi, how you doing? I'm Joe DeFeo from Duran. He says, this was a year ago. He says, good to meet you. I know Joe Duran and this. And I said, that's great. He said, yeah, I was sad he passed away. And then And then he looked at me and said, you know, we should have done lean first, not Six Sigma. And I said, well, why do you say that? Just out of the blue.
Yeah.
And he said, because the culture wasn't ready to take on some really deep thought thinking. And the lean stuff seemed to be simpler to grasp. I realized the importance of it, but I would have done it the other way. And I sat down, I looked at my wife, I said, that was very interesting. I never met this guy. And he just said that. And it's almost like he had to get that off his chest. And I think what that said was, at the time I needed help, the only tool I saw, I took. And it worked. But then I learned this other thing, and it worked faster. So if I went with that first, so we call it leading with lean or leading with Six Sigma, and match it to your business need.
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
And he's still very active. It was very interesting. He was very active.
Yeah. All right. So let me ask you, you gave a couple of examples. If I were in this industry, I'd think about this. And of course, I'm going to ask you right now, Joe, what would you do in healthcare? What would you do in information technology? What would you do in a finance group? And of course, I'm asking you to pick one specific scenario, describe it quickly, and then tell me what you would recommend as a methodology, knowing that not every business is the same, not every maturity level is the same, not every industry is the same. So you can't take just what you're going to say, Joe, and I think you'll agree with me, as the gospel. You need to, back to your original question, what methodology should I pick? You need to say why, and that why is specific to every single company. But having said that, people need to be able to look and benchmark and take in data and say, okay, I understand this, because it cements their way of thinking and allows them to then build on top of that and select a more appropriate methodology for them. So let me ask you this. Which methodology would you recommend? What's the right methodology for a healthcare organization? And describe the scenario briefly and then tell me what you would recommend.
I'm going to answer all your questions by following the money. So for healthcare, the money comes from insurance providers and the government. Mm-hmm. And so if you don't satisfy those two, you don't get reimbursed. And so the biggest problem in hospitals not getting reimbursed is too much variation in the hospital. So with too much variation, they really have to find out where those defects are coming from and attack them from the service provider, the insurance provider, or the payer point of view. And there's millions of dollars left on the table. So they need some Six Sigma, no question, in healthcare.
And that's Six Sigma because there's variation related to why they're not being able to.
Right. So two doctors, patient comes in, two doctors, treat them differently. One is 5,000, one is 10,000. Mm-hmm. So that goes off and gets, well, why are they different? So that variation creates a slowdown. So why does that happen? Now, there's two other places in the hospital that Six Sigma is less important and lean is very important, and that is the OR and the ED. The operating rooms and or any diagnostic room, operating room, diagnostic room, or ED, emergency room, those things are driven off flow. And the more patients you put through, the more money you make, and therefore that we stay alive, follow the money again. Mm-hmm. Those three areas are clearly conducive to leaning them out. There's a lot of obstacles to prevent those things from happening. And when you lean them out, you realize you have excess capacity, and therefore you don't have to build new rooms. So a hospital, it may not give you the answer you want, but there's two areas. One is follow the money. You got a lot of variation. Go after that money first. If you want to really bring in the higher paying, go after those diagnostic labs.
That's exactly the kind of answer that I was looking for, Joe. What if you run a facilities department at a university, at a hospital, at a manufacturing facility? You're the back end. You make sure that the floors are swept, that the lights are replaced, that the buildings have the proper backup power. Your facilities management. Your budget gets slashed every single year.
I would, I'm picking these universities, picking those kind of facilities. The biggest process between a person and their customer. So if I'm the electrician, I got to go fix a light. If I'm the janitor, I got to go clean the bins. If I am the sweeper, I got to go sweep the floors. How am I going to apply that? Well, clearly, 6S and speed, 6S and lean are the best ways to go. Why? Because the 6S methodology gets any department, any specific area to be able to standardize. So if I am simply the janitor, I have got my areas clean, it's neat, I can mobilize quickly, I've got standardization of materials, I get out there. Same thing, electrician, plumbers, and facilities are a group of laborers like that. In a sense, they're professional laborers, they march out. Same thing with a maintenance department in a factory or a building. They have to be really simply 6S thinking, and that's probably going to get them mostly what they want. And then the other one is simplification. Simplify, simplify, simplify.
Yeah.
Just because we tend to do those things very slowly. Call comes in, I need your help. Work order process slows me down. So simplification through process improvement and using something very simple like a 6S methodology of lean.
And that will allow them to do their job more efficiently and effective so that they can reduce their costs and try and meet their budgets.
Yeah, and the key, people don't realize reduction of cost comes from standardization. If I have multiple types of inventory that I use to manage these facilities with, well, I'm probably spending more money than I need to. So if I standardize, I buy more of the same, I can reduce my cost. Or when you don't have standardization, you tend to have to manage more suppliers. You have to manage more things. Once again, reduction of cost. And here's another one. If you can't find things, you spend more hours doing that, eventually you hire more people. So if you can simplify things, you may not have to hire more people. And just like an accountant, an R&D person, an engineer, a janitor, a carpenter, the more time you spend wrench time, the more value you provide the customer.
Right.
The more time you spend trying to figure out how to do that, the less value you provide. So
yeah. All right. What's the best methodology for an organization or a division within a company that focuses on information technology, keeping the back ends up and running, making sure that the computers are processing what they need to process, the internet's up and running, the IT group that develops the fixes for the bugs, unfortunately, that are in this, that customers experience, or developing new products. There's Agile out there in the software world. There's Scrum out there. There's a lot of methodologies that are just for software development. What do you do when a company comes to you and says, they're helping us do things, but we're not delivering what the customer wants? What do you recommend to them?
We call it quality in a nanosecond, because the IT world is in a nanosecond. What you just described there is quality by design, designed for Six Sigma-like program. Why? Most technology companies are in fast-paced environments, and they have great design engineers. When they have a clear understanding of customer requirements, they can design anything. Most software bugs, most system bugs come when you don't have a clear understanding of those requirements. And so the whole idea behind Agile and Scrum is to bring the design engineers closer to the customer, move faster, get rid of things. And so that is what we call, and Juran calls, the quality by design side, meaning get the customer, voice of the customer as clearly understood as possible, and then use a standard process for designing and developing. And I would also say that if you do that, there's a pretty good chance you're going to lead to process innovation, not just product innovation, because you might find things you can design in that changes the process. So for instance, if I find that a customer wants a very high uptime and self-maintenance, well, that might eliminate testing in our lab, because if it can self-test, then why do we have to test? So you get process innovation. So quality by design, no question. If I were to identify the biggest failure of a lot of newly designed technology products is clearly not understanding the large cast of customers, not just the user, but the cast of customers around that. Can it be tested? Can it be built? Can it be designed? We work with large deliverers of IT services. One of the biggest issues they have is service level agreement discrepancy. Was it in the agreement or not? Well, it's not that we don't know how to do it. We're charging you for something you think shouldn't have been charged for. Once again, we didn't have a clear understanding of voice of the customer. And I can even narrow down quality by design and design for Six Sigma into really simply, truly understanding that voice of the customer, and then let your design process take it from there. And Agile and Scrums are really trying to speed that up. That's all they're trying to do.
Yeah. All right. So let me just pick one more area. customer service. Every business has a customer service department. They handle inquiries in from the customer, either for new business or to service their current business or complaints that are coming in. Can you pick a scenario, describe it briefly, and tell us what methodology would be best to support a customer service department?
Just smile a lot. See, there you go. That's what it used to be. I'm going to give my answer with something that just happened to me this week. And I'm going to actually go out on a limb and say, a couple years ago, Hertz was sold and their service was horrible. This last week, I was so shocked at how good their service was, I had to find out. And the answer to my question is, good customer service comes when you eliminate customer dissatisfaction. What are the things that make them mad first? And that is a process improvement Six Sigma initiative. So, for instance, I went to the Hertz place. Yeah, you see my name up in lights. Mm-hmm. But I actually said, can I change my car? I'm in California. I want a cool car. They said, sure, come with me. Here's a couple of choices. I said, what do I got to do? He says, nothing. Just, do you like that one? Yes. He said, it's going to be a $50 upgrade. I said, what do I got to do? He said, nothing. Just stay here. I'll come right back. 2 years ago, that would not have happened.
Right.
Then when I brought the car back, you usually get this, grumpy person. They were asking me not just, how about the car? What did you like? But they really were adding value to making my stay. By the way, you have to go over there. That's where the thing is. How many times did I have to say, where's the bus? Mm-hmm. So there was clearly, they solved the issues of my dissatisfaction. And maybe it was just one place, but I've seen it in a number of places now. So anything customer service, get rid of the dissatisfaction first, then focus on ways you want to sell me more business. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to name this company. I walked into another company, and the first thing they say is, are you putting in a new kitchen? And I said, do I have it written on my shirt? I want to put in a new kitchen? Of course I'm not. I'm looking for a bulb. And they're trying to get you to buy a new kitchen. That's not the right approach to customer service. Customer service should be, let me get what I want, then you get what you want. And if you get those backwards, you might be selling more, but you're surely not making the customer very happy.
Yeah. Great point, Joe. Can a company choose one improvement methodology and then move to another one later? Are they going to look like they're flip-floppers, or that they chose the wrong methodology to begin with? In what scenarios have you seen that as an appropriate response at an organization?
Obviously, it's very pragmatic to use the right tool at the right time. So we start with one today, we got to go to one tomorrow. The failure in what you just described is when the flip-flop, the failure there is that we are really bad at educating and communicating. And so that's where the real problem lies, is that, and I tried, and it's gotten better. I got to be honest with you. I don't see that much like we used to 10 years ago. And the reason is because my business operating system has Lean and Six Sigma and these tools. Versus I'm doing the Duran method or the Deming method or the Lean method. So I think one reason why we're seeing less of that is because we call it a business operating system, and we explain our business operating system will morph and change back. Therefore, the tools have to. Also, there is an evolution of maturity. So we might start with something simple and advance later. And here's a very good reason for that. So there's the education piece comes in. We're operating at 20% defect level. It's not going to take much to get us to 1. But when we're at 1, and we got to go to 0.1, it's harder. And 0.1 to 0.1, it's even harder. So there's a real reason to be more sophisticated as higher and higher levels of quality are attained. And this is where a lot of people really fall apart. Like, we got to a high level, and so we don't have to train anybody new coming in. We don't do this. Well, no, it's actually got to do more. It's harder to stay at that level. It's much easier to be a bad performer than a good performer. And so people will then say, what do we got to do? Oh, we did that. We did that. When you ask the question, what did you do? Well, yeah, we brought it in. We never really did it. So the real message is education and communicating that right now, this point in time, this is what's going to help us. And it's just like a strategy. You change that every 3 to 5 years. So your method's got to change every 3 to 5 years. And unfortunately, some people don't get that, and they create, this is a new fad, or we've been there, we've done that. And I just say, well, if you've been there and done that, then why am I here today? Obviously, you didn't do that because I know that works, and it didn't work for you. Right. Why? And then you get the whole host of reasons.
So being able to call it a business operating system or my company operating system, and starting off with a focus on, say, Lean and standardizing your processes and make sure you have the right flow for the right demand from your customers. And then when you solve that problem that you put lean in for and you understand now what the business problems are, you can look for the appropriate tools at that time. And maybe that's Six Sigma, and maybe that's Lean Six Sigma, and maybe it's some other tool set. But then you just continue to evolve your business operating system to match what the business needs are to support the customer at that time.
Yes, and really the evolution of that operating system might be in technology itself. So you see a lot of common systems going to like a SharePoint workflow. A lot of processes being, instead of doing design of experiment, you're simulating them on an iGraphics-like tool. Mm-hmm. So the evolution is not just method, it's also technology. Mm-hmm. And as you change technology, clearly for instance, this technology you and I are doing right now is that, to get this information before, you'd have to read a book or you go to a public workshop. So now I'm giving this technology to you, you're going to give it to your customers, and the customers are going to have it in their hands. So it's very different, and so I have to prepare different, you have to prepare different, and so the organization has to prepare different.
Right.
And what's important to you is having the technology that allows us to go uninterrupted. So it's very different, and people tend to forget that we have to change for certain reasons.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Joe, one of the reasons why
services.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I didn't say financial services. I love to talk about financial services.
All right, let me ask you, financial services. So are you you want to talk about financial services and choosing the right business improvement methodology?
Yes, because
okay.
they do it worse than anybody.
So what is the right methodology for financial services?
Well, this is going to be a backwards question because financial services want to do Lean and Six Sigma, but they really don't want to do anything because they make money off interest rates. That's where most of their money comes from. And when interest rates are high, who needs to make improvements? And so one is, don't do anything complex in financial service. Keep it real simple. Do very simple